easy to distinguish. However, it's not always as easy to distinguish books. Okay, books can also be a popular source or a scholarly source. So I'm going to show you the difference by looking at two books that have a similar topic. One is a popular source and one is a scholarly source. All right. So the first book that we're going to look at here is called Nickeled and Dimed, and it came out a few years ago. The subtitle is On Not Getting By in America, written by Barbara Ehrenreich. And this is a book about the experience of living on minimum wage in the United States. And what Ehrenreich did is she did an experiment where she took, I think it was a year, and did a series of jobs that were all minimum wage, including waitressing, being a hotel maid, that kind of thing, in order to see what it's like to live on minimum wage in these and what these jobs are like. How can you get by? And then she wrote her book about it. So she has a lot of information in here about living on minimum wage and what that's like. And um, so the first thing that we're going to look at to determine whether this is a scholarly source or a popular source is, who is Barbara Ehrenreich? Okay, so if we click on over here, I pulled up her website that has a bio about her. And so it's got a lot of information, background history. We're going to scroll down a little bit here to where she talks about her work life. She started out as a journalist, and then as a journalist, she transitioned into writing book length projects, and then she moved into activism. So she's done a lot of journalism. She's well known for her journalism, and she did have a teaching job at the State University of New York. Um, she does have uh, she went to grad school at Rockefeller University in theoretical physics. So she does have some expertise, but not in the field of economics. Okay, so she's not an expert in this field. So that's our first clue that this is a popular rather than a scholarly source. Okay, the next thing is I'm going to scroll down here and we're going to look at the contents. Okay, so she has an introduction, 3 chapters, an evaluation, and an afterword, and a reader's guide. Scholarly works are typically not going to have anything like a reader's guide. It's going to be assumed that the readers of a scholarly work don't need a guide. Okay. Um, you'll notice there's no kind of index or references page listed here as either, and typically you will have at least an index in a scholarly work. So we're going to scroll down here to the introduction. She's got an introduction here. And we're just going to scroll right on through that for a minute. If you notice here, we have yet to see any kind of footnote or anything like that. If I stop just briefly, you'll notice that there's a lot of first person pronouns here. I, and then ongoing. So what we know from that is that this is a narrative driven. This is a very personal kind of a thing that she's writing. Typically in a scholarly work, you are not going to see that much first person. So we're going to keep scanning through here and go down to her first chapter, working as a server in Florida. We're going to scroll, keep scrolling, keep scrolling. Still no footnotes or anything like that. Ah, look, we found a footnote. Okay, and in this footnote, she talks about statistics. So 81% of large employers now require pre-employment drug testing, up to 21% up from 21% in 1987. So it was 81% now, and it used to be 21%. So we have this information. If you continue looking at this, this is all interesting information. There's not a single citation here, right? So we don't know where she got her statistical information from. We don't know where she got the rest of the information in this footnote from. So that right there clinches for us that this is not a scholarly work. If it was, she would be citing her sources for that information. And again, here's some more, and this one has a rough citation, right, according to the Fair Labor Standards Act. Act, employers are not required to pay tipped employees, such as restaurant servers, more than $2.13 an hour. Any of you who have ever worked as a server and made that $2.13 an hour, you know that's rough. Anyway, that's a side note. But you can see, again, I'm sorry, that information is not really cited. She says the Fair Labor Standard Act, but she doesn't give you information about where to find that. So this is a key difference, the fact that she doesn't have citations. And then we get to the end of the chapter, just a little bit further down. And, I guess we don't have the rest of that chapter. So she doesn't have references, right? She doesn't list references in this. She just gives the information as it is, the same way that a journalist would. That's how we know that this is a popular source. Okay, we know that her audience is a broad audience, because if you stop and read a little bit of it, it's written in simple, relatively simple language. There's nothing technical going on here. She's not talking about economics. She doesn't have any sources cited. She doesn't have a bibliography, and she herself is not an expert in the field. So those are some main criteria. Now, this isn't to say that there's anything wrong with the book that she produced. In fact, it's really quite a good book. And if you ever have time to read a chapter or two out of it, or the whole thing, if you can, I think it will really be eye-opening to you about what the experience is of people who live on minimum wage or who try to live on minimum wage. But it's not a scholarly source. It would be useful in a lot of cases as a popular source, but it doesn't have the expertise of a scholarly source. So here's a book that does have the expertise of a scholarly source. It's called Uneven Tides: Rising Inequality in America.